The universe is not poor. It is overflowing with abundance, and every man and woman has been born into a kingdom that already contains their riches. Wealth is not created by toil alone, nor by worry, nor by clutching and grasping. Wealth comes when one aligns with the law of supply, the invisible current that moves through all life, waiting for recognition, waiting for obedience. When a man recognizes the law and speaks the word of plenty, doors open where there were no doors, rivers flow where once there was desert. There is a divine design for every soul, and in that design is provision. Money, ideas, opportunities, perfect ways of expression. Poverty has no place in the divine plan. Poverty is only the shadow cast by doubt, fear, and false belief. Many Americans live under the spell of limitation because they repeat the world's chant of lack. They believe money is hard to get. They believe success is for the few. They believe the struggle is real, and so they struggle. But the truth is this: the struggle is a lie. The kingdom is here and now. To become rich, one must break with the hypnotism of limitation. One must declare, I am rich in divine substance. I see wealth flowing to me from every direction. The doors of supply swing open wide. Nothing and no one can keep my good from me. The spoken word is the key. For words are seeds. Every word man speaks builds his world. If he sows words of lack, he reaps lack. If he sows words of plenty, he reaps plenty. The soil of the universe is always fertile. It must return the harvest of the seed. The riches of America are not buried in banks or hidden in vaults. The riches of America lie in the spoken word of her people. When Americans begin to speak wealth instead of want, faith instead of fear, gratitude instead of complaint, the nation itself will blossom with prosperity. Great inventions will spring forth, new enterprises will rise. Money will circulate in ever-widening channels, and no man will be left behind who dares to claim his share. There is nothing selfish in wealth when wealth is understood. For divine wealth is not hoarding. It is circulation. It is rivers of gold flowing to you and through you. When a man becomes rich in divine order, he blesses others. He pays well, he gives freely. He multiplies opportunities for all around him. His wealth is not taken from another, it is drawn fresh from the infinite. There is always enough and to spare. The great mistake is believing that money comes by hard grind, by pushing against the tide. True wealth is effortless, for it is carried on the tide of right words, right thoughts, right actions. Americans will become rich if they will remember this law: what you prepare for with your words, you will meet in your life. If you prepare for plenty, plenty will meet you. If you prepare for struggle, struggle will meet you. Life always fulfills the picture you paint with your speech. Every word carries life, every word carries power, every word goes out into the unseen and returns with its kind. When a man speaks of wealth, he plants wealth. When a woman declares abundance, abundance is summoned from every direction. The universe listens, the law obeys, and the harvest comes in due season. For nothing spoken in faith is ever lost, and nothing declared in truth can fail to return. Words are not idle. They are the invisible tools by which man shapes his destiny. What he holds in speech, he holds in hand. What he sows in sound, he reaps in form. Many think words are small, passing things, easily forgotten, quickly dissolved. But words do not vanish, they create. The careless statement of want, the sigh of despair, the complaint repeated day after day, these form a chain that binds a life to lack. Each declaration of, I can't afford it, each murmuring of, money is scarce, is a seed sown in the soil of the unseen, and the soil must obey the seed. The result appears as empty pockets, missed opportunities, unpaid bills, and endless struggle. The man wonders why the tide turns against him, not knowing he himself has sent forth the command. On the other hand, when words of wealth are spoken with faith, when declarations of supply are made with certainty, the tide shifts. Money begins to appear in unexpected ways, channels open, debts dissolve, work flows, opportunities multiply. For words go before a man like invisible messengers, preparing the way. They enter the invisible, gather substance, and return clothed in visible form. The world is but a mirror, reflecting the picture held by the tongue. Speak lack, and lack looks back. Speak wealth, and wealth answers. It is not enough to think prosperity, it must be spoken. Thought carries vibration, but speech carries command. Thought is the seed within. Speech is the seed sown. A garden planted in silence remains hidden, but a word spoken aloud plants the seed in the great field of life, where all things must grow. When one says, I am rich in divine substance, I see wealth everywhere. My supply is endless and immediate. The soil of the universe receives that seed, and the harvest begins. The ancient law is simple. By your words you are justified, and by your words you are condemned. Justified into wealth, or condemned into want. The tongue is the rudder of the ship, turning the course of destiny. No matter the storm, no matter the waves, if the rudder is fixed on plenty, the ship will reach the shore of abundance. But if the rudder is fixed on fear, if the sailor speaks of ruin and loss, then ruin and loss are what he steers toward. Children learn early to repeat the words they hear, and so generations repeat the chant of lack without question. Families say, we have never had much, and so the pattern repeats. A nation says, times are hard, and the echo becomes reality. But the moment a man breaks the chant and speaks new words, the chain is broken. He declares a new story. He calls forth a new harvest. The seed of wealth cannot fail when planted with faith, for it is rooted in divine law. The law does not distinguish between careless words and deliberate ones. It does not choose for you. It only reflects. If you say, I am always broke, the law agrees and keeps you broke. If you say, I always prosper, the law agrees and keeps you prospering. The universe is impersonal, impartial, exact. It gives back what it receives. It multiplies what it is told, and man, through his words, commands the multiplication. Wealth begins not in the bank account, but in the mouth. A man with no money, but with the word of plenty on his lips is already rich in seed, and his harvest cannot fail to come. A man with $1 million, but with words of fear and loss on his lips is already poor in seed, and his harvest cannot fail to wither. For the source of wealth is not in visible supply, but in the invisible spoken word. The word draws the supply, the word holds the supply, the word multiplies the supply. The farmer knows he cannot plant thorns and reap figs. He knows he cannot sow weeds and expect wheat. So it is with speech. The man who sows words of lack cannot reap prosperity. The woman who speaks words of fear cannot gather abundance. Yet many stand puzzled in their barren fields, wondering why no crop of plenty grows, while their lips are filled with the language of limitation. The soil has only done its work. It has only returned the seed given to it. The wise man watches his words as carefully as he watches his steps. He guards his tongue against complaint, against doubt, against envy, against fear. He speaks only of good, only of increase, only of supply. When tempted to say, I cannot afford it, he changes the word. It is not yet mine by right, but it is coming. When tempted to declare, business is bad, he speaks instead, divine opportunities are opening. New doors are before me. For he knows every word spoken sends out a command, and every command must be obeyed. To speak wealth is to honor the source of wealth. To declare abundance is to recognize the infinite storehouse of supply. To say, money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways, is to give permission for the law to work. To say, I am divinely provided for, I am divinely prospered, I am divinely rich, is to open the gates of the invisible treasury. The words are the key. The lock opens only to the spoken sound. Words are not mere breath, they are the breath of creation. The world itself was spoken into being. Light was spoken, life was spoken, order was spoken. And so it is with man's world. Each life is spoken into being day by day. Each man creates his world by his tongue. The rich man and the poor man stand equal before the law of speech. The one sows words of plenty, the other words of want, and the harvest proves the seed. The seed cannot lie. The soil cannot lie. The harvest cannot lie. It is all truth in action. If the harvest is lack, the seed was lack. If the harvest is wealth, the seed was wealth. There is no trickery in the law. There is only exactness. Words go out like arrows, never to return empty. They hit their mark, they pierce the unseen, they draw forth the form. Words are law in motion. Words are substance taking shape. Words are wealth made visible. The belief in poverty is the great deception that binds mankind in chains heavier than iron. Poverty is not real in the divine order, for the infinite cannot know lack. The sun does not ration its rays, nor does the ocean measure its waves. The earth does not count its blossoms, and the stars do not hold back their light. All creation testifies to boundless supply. Yet man, created in the image of abundance, speaks of scarcity, imagines shortage, fears emptiness, and thus writes poverty into his experience. Poverty is not truth, it is a shadow cast by wrong thinking, an illusion woven by fear and ignorance. The mind that believes in poverty sees only closed doors, but the mind that knows divine supply sees openings everywhere. A man who believes in lack can walk through a garden of treasures and come away empty, for his eyes are blind to opportunity. But the man who knows supply is endless can sit in a barren room and see riches forming before him. It is belief alone that makes one poor, and belief alone that makes one rich. Divine supply is like air, invisible, immeasurable, inexhaustible. To believe in poverty is to believe one can run out of air. It is as false as saying the sun has gone out because one sits in the shade. Poverty takes root in words repeated, in thoughts entertained, in fears accepted. Children grow hearing their parents speak of bills, of struggle, of not enough, and they learn the chant of lack before they learn the truth of supply. They inherit not poverty itself, but the false belief in poverty. This belief is passed like a torch, lighting the same dim fire of limitation in each generation. Yet the moment one awakens and says, "There is no lack in God's world. There is always enough. I claim my portion now," the spell is broken. The false belief dissolves and divine supply begins to flow. Supply is not created by man, it exists already. Every invention, every opportunity, every dollar that will ever be needed is already present in the invisible storehouse. Man does not need to create supply, he needs only to claim it, to recognize it, to align with it. The river of abundance flows constantly, and man is free to drink as much as he will. If he takes only a thimbleful, the river does not diminish. If he takes by the gallon, the river does not protest. If he drains a barrel, the river still flows without end. Poverty is nothing but the refusal to drink. The false belief in poverty leads to fear, and fear paralyzes action. A man afraid of lack will cling to what little he has, hoard his coins, guard his scraps, and in guarding them he shuts the doors of increase. He cannot receive while his hands are closed. But the man who knows supply is infinite gives freely, spends with confidence, blesses every exchange, and opens channels for more to flow back. His very generosity becomes a magnet. His faith becomes substance, for he does not act from fear, but from knowledge that divine supply is never exhausted. Consider the birds of the air, they neither sow nor reap, yet they are fed. The lilies of the field toil not, yet they are clothed in beauty. If creation itself is cared for without worry, how much more shall man, the crown of creation, be cared for? Poverty enters only when man turns his back on divine law, when he exalts fear above faith, when he believes in shadows instead of light. The truth remains, there is no poverty in divine order, only supply waiting to be claimed. Every man is heir to abundance. He is born into an inheritance that cannot be taken from him. Yet like the heir who forgets his rights, he may live as a pauper while treasures lie within reach. He may wander in want, because he has accepted the false belief that his portion is small, that fortune has passed him by, that life has denied him. But the instant he awakens and remembers, "I am heir to infinite supply. My good is mine now," his inheritance begins to manifest. The check arrives, the door opens, the opportunity appears, the supply takes form. False belief has woven the fabric of poverty into the world's systems. Nations speak of recessions, of shortages, of debts. Markets rise and fall. Men panic and despair, but all of this is illusion. The earth has not lessened in its resources. The sun has not dimmed. The soil has not refused to yield. Supply remains as full as ever. It is belief that creates famine, and belief that creates plenty. The man who sees only scarcity contributes to scarcity, but the one who declares abundance opens the floodgates for abundance to manifest. Poverty does not exist in truth, only in consciousness. A beggar may live in the richest city on earth and still starve, because his consciousness holds only want. A king may lose his throne and yet attract riches, because his consciousness is filled with supply. Riches are not in the bank, nor in the purse, nor in the land, they are in the mind aligned with the infinite. To change conditions, one must change belief. Speak supply, think supply, expect supply, and supply will appear. Speak lack, think lack, fear lack, and lack will appear. The law is exact and unfailing. A man who knows divine supply is unlimited, walks through life unafraid. He does not shrink when bills arrive, for he knows the money to meet them is already provided. He does not tremble when opportunities seem scarce, for he knows new doors are always opening. He does not envy another's success, for he knows his portion is secure. He does not bow to fear of the future, for he knows tomorrow's supply is as certain as today's breath. His faith is his fortune. His belief is his bank. His consciousness is his storehouse. The false belief in poverty is like a cloud that hides the sun but does not put it out. It is like a curtain drawn across a window, hiding the view but not destroying it. The moment the cloud passes, the sun shines. The moment the curtain is lifted, the view appears. So it is with supply. Remove the belief in poverty, and abundance shines forth. The wealth was always there, waiting behind the veil of doubt. Riches are like blood in the body, like water in the river, like breath in the lungs. They must move, they must flow, they must circulate. The moment they are hoarded, they stagnate, and stagnation is decay. The miser who clutches his gold clutches dust, for he has broken the law of increase. He believes in fear, not in flow. He shuts his doors and windows, believing he is keeping wealth in, but in truth he is shutting wealth out. The river that is dammed up without outlet becomes a swamp, filled with stench and sickness. But the river that flows freely remains clear, sparkling, full of life. So it is with money, with wealth, with true riches. Many think to gain security by hoarding, by grasping, by storing more than they need. But they discover that their wealth does not multiply, it shrinks. Fear is written on their faces, anxiety follows them to their beds, and every coin they cling to weighs them down. Hoarding is not faith, it is distrust of divine supply. It is saying, I must guard my good, for it may run out. But the truth is divine supply never runs out. It flows like the tide, returning again and again in perfect rhythm. To trust the law is to give freely, to spend without fear, to bless every channel of circulation. True riches are not measured by what a man keeps, but by what flows through him. He who is a channel for supply becomes wealthy beyond measure. He gives, and more returns. He blesses, and blessings multiply. He opens his hand and life fills it again and again. The farmer does not hoard his seed in the barn, for he knows it must be sound to yield a harvest. If he fears to plant, he forfeits his crop. The man who circulates his riches is like the farmer who sows generously, knowing that every seed sown must return a multiplied harvest. Circulation is the rhythm of the universe. The heart beats, the blood flows, the breath comes in and goes out, the tides rise and fall, day follows night. There is no stillness without death, no hoarding without loss. Money itself is called currency, because it must flow like a current. When a man spends with joy, pays with gratitude, gives with confidence, he sets the current in motion, and it returns to him increased. But when he spends with fear, gives with resentment, or withholds altogether, he breaks the current and wonders why poverty creeps in. True riches are not only money. They are ideas, love, service, health, joy, opportunities. All these must circulate. A smile given returns as goodwill. A kind word spoken multiplies in the hearts of others. A service rendered draws forth new opportunities. Money given in faith returns as unexpected increase. To hoard affection, to withhold words of kindness, to clutch at time and talents is the same as hoarding money, it blocks the flow. Life is circulation, and circulation is life. There are those who say, I will give when I have more. But the law is this: you must give first, and the more will come. Waiting to give is waiting for the harvest without planting the seed. The soil cannot return what has not been sown. If a man waits until he is rich to give, he never becomes rich, for he withholds the very act that unlocks abundance. Give when you have little, and you will have much. Circulate when your means seem small, and the channels will widen. Faith proves itself not in plenty but in want. The widow's mite was counted greater than the rich man's abundance, because it was given in faith, and faith always multiplies. Hoarding is born of fear, and fear destroys wealth. A man may save all his life, stacking coins, hiding notes, watching accounts, yet one turn of fortune. One market crash, one thief, one fire, and all vanishes. But he who trusts circulation cannot lose, for even if one channel closes, another opens. His wealth is not in the thing but in the law. He does not depend on the bank, the market, the purse. He depends on the endless stream of divine supply. He knows that as long as he circulates, he will be supplied. Circulation also purifies. The act of giving cleanses the soul of greed, softens the heart, opens the mind. It proves to the subconscious that supply is abundant and that there is nothing to fear. Every time one spends with joy, pays with faith, gives with love, he affirms, there is always more where this came from, and so more comes. Every time one gives grudgingly, hoards nervously, or refuses to part with a little, he affirms, there may not be enough. And so not enough becomes his experience. The law reflects belief, and belief is revealed in circulation. Even nature teaches this. The tree takes from the soil and gives to the air. The rain falls to the earth. The rivers carry it to the sea gives it back to the sky. Nothing is held forever, everything moves. A man who withholds his riches sets himself against nature itself, and nature corrects him. But a man who circulates his riches flows with the rhythm of life, and life carries him forward in safety and increase. True riches are also found in the joy of circulation. The miser may have a full chest, but he has an empty heart. He knows no gladness in giving, no gratitude in spending, no thrill in blessing others. His gold weighs him down, his fear chains him, and his hoard becomes his prison. But the man who circulates feels alive, light, joyful. Every bill paid with thanksgiving fills him with freedom. Every gift given with love fills him with joy. Every act of circulation brings him more to circulate, and his wealth becomes a song, not a burden. It is a false belief that holding tightly brings security. Real security is in knowing that the source of riches is infinite. Real safety is in the law of circulation itself. If the spring flows constantly, why fear the empty cup? Refill is certain. If the air is endless, why hoard the breath? To exhale is to make room for the inhale. So with wealth, to give is to prepare to receive. To circulate is to keep the stream clear and flowing. To hoard is to dam the stream, to suffocate the breath, to block the flow. The truth is that circulation multiplies. Every act of giving sets in motion a return. Every payment blesses the giver as well as the receiver. Every coin that passes from hand to hand carries energy, and when that energy is joy, gratitude, faith, it returns increased. Money spent with fear returns with loss. Money spent with confidence returns with gain. The law is unfailing, and the test is in the spirit with which one circulates. Man has been taught from childhood that toil is the way to gain, that hard work alone is the measure of success, that sweat and strain produce prosperity. And so the world is filled with weary workers. Men and women bent under the load of ceaseless effort, believing that through sheer force they can wrestle wealth into their lives. Yet the harder they labor, the more elusive true riches seem. Their days are long, their burdens heavy, and still they struggle. For effort without alignment is struggle, and struggle is not the law of life. Life was never meant to be a battle against lack. Life was designed to flow with ease, with order, with increase that comes naturally, just as rivers flow to the sea and flowers open to the sun. Alignment is the key. When a man aligns with divine law, his work is not toil but expression. His efforts are no longer strained, but joyful. What once took great pushing and pulling comes easily, without friction. Alignment is the joining of thought, word, and action with the truth of infinite supply. It is knowing that the source of wealth is not muscle, nor hours, nor struggle, but the unseen law that multiplies what is in harmony with it. A man who is aligned can do less and gain more, while another who is unaligned may do much and gain little. Faith is alignment in action. Faith is the quiet knowing that one's good is assured, that the channel is open, that supply cannot fail. The man of faith speaks the word, and the way is prepared. He takes a single step, and doors swing open. He works, but his work is not wearisome, for he knows it is not the work that provides, but the law that fulfills. His faith makes his effort fruitful, and his fruit multiplies without struggle. Faith is not idleness, it is not passivity. It is the divine activity of believing before seeing, trusting before possessing, and walking in the certainty of unseen supply. Struggle is born of fear. When a man fears lack, he strives to secure more through force. He works long hours, he grasps at every opportunity. He wears himself thin in restless labor, yet his harvest is meager. He lives with clenched fists, driven by the belief that only through endless effort can he survive. But faith opens the hands, loosens the shoulders, lifts the heart. Faith says, I need not strive, for my good is already mine. I need only act in harmony with divine order, and the increase will come. The difference is night and day, for one life is burdened and barren, while the other is free and fruitful. The earth itself shows this law. The farmer who plows in season, sows in rhythm, and trusts the soil does not labor in vain. He does not stretch himself into anxiety, nor does he force the seed to sprout. He aligns with nature, works in harmony with its rhythms, and the harvest comes. Another may scatter seed in the wrong time, toil endlessly at the soil, fret at the skies, and find little return. It is not effort alone that brings the crop, but effort aligned with the law. So it is with wealth, with business, with life. Alignment produces effortless increase, misalignment produces endless struggle. Many believe that struggle is noble, that suffering is proof of worth. They wear their weariness like a badge, boasting of long hours and endless labor. Yet struggle is not virtue, it is ignorance of the law. The divine does not require man to grind himself into dust for supply. The divine requires only faith, alignment, obedience to the inner voice. When a man is aligned, he may do less in the world's eyes, but achieve more in truth. His steps are guided, his words are timed, his actions are blessed. He avoids the waste of misdirected energy, the losses of false starts, the detours of fear-driven choices. His way is straight, his path is clear, and increase follows him naturally. Effort without alignment is like rowing against the current. Much motion, little progress. Exhaustion without arrival. Faith and alignment are like hoisting the sail. Little strain, swift movement, the wind carrying one forward with ease. The difference is not in the river, nor in the boat, but in the way one chooses to move. The struggler exhausts himself, blaming the current. The believer trusts the wind, and arrives with strength to spare. Faith brings ideas, and ideas bring effortless increase. A man may labor years at a task with small return, until one inspired idea transforms his life overnight. That idea comes not from grinding effort, but from alignment, from listening to the quiet within, from trusting the guidance of the unseen. In faith, the mind opens, intuition flows, creative doors swing wide. The man of faith acts not in blind toil, but in inspired wisdom, and his little becomes much. The world may call it luck, chance, coincidence, but it is simply the fruit of alignment. Faith brings helpers opportunities, connections resources. Where the struggler feels alone and unsupported, the man of faith finds himself carried, assisted, supplied. People come into his life at the right time. Doors open in the right place, money appears in the right hour. He does not beg, nor chase, nor force, but simply walks in certainty, and the law arranges the details. His faith draws his supply like a magnet. His trust becomes substance, and his substance multiplies. To align is to stop fighting against life and start flowing with it. To align is to trust that the universe is friendly, that the law is faithful, that supply is certain. To align is to release worry, to lay down fear, to cease striving in doubt, and to begin acting in confidence. Work becomes joy when it is expression, not desperation. Labor becomes light when it is guided, not frantic. Business becomes play when it is inspired, not fearful. The man of faith does not escape effort, but his effort is free of burden. He does not deny work, but his work is effortless in spirit. He does not reject action, but his action is filled with confidence, timing, and ease. Struggle is not proof of strength, it is proof of misalignment. Faith is not laziness, it is the highest form of activity. The struggler says, "If I do not work harder, I will lose everything." The believer says, "As I align with divine law, my supply cannot fail." The struggler wears his body out, the believer renews his strength daily. The struggler spends his life chasing supply, the believer draws supply to him. The struggler sweats in the heat of fear, the believer walks in the cool of faith. Every man prepares for something, whether he knows it or not. His thoughts, his words, his actions, his daily habits are all a kind of preparation. To prepare for lack is to meet lack. To prepare for struggle is to meet struggle. To prepare for disappointment is to meet disappointment. Life answers the picture man paints, and the picture is revealed in how he prepares. If his house is filled with fear, if his speech is filled with limitation, if his actions are small and cautious, he is preparing for a little harvest. And life never fails to bring him exactly what he has made ready for. The law is unfailing: what you expect, you attract. Expectation is invisible preparation. The man who expects plenty makes room for it, he clears the way, he arranges his life to welcome it. His consciousness becomes a vessel large enough to hold abundance. But the man who secretly expects little never receives much, for he has not made space. He clings to the small, he clutches the old, he holds fast to what he has, and in so doing he leaves no room for increase. Supply cannot flow into a vessel already filled with fear. To prepare for plenty is to act in faith before the plenty arrives. It is to speak words of gratitude for supply unseen, to walk as though increase is already on the way, to arrange one's affairs in harmony with abundance. The merchant who prepares for more customers, by enlarging his store, by ordering more goods, by planning for growth, draws growth. The man who waits until increase is visible to prepare for it finds that increase never comes. Faith must act first. Faith builds the barn before the harvest, digs the ditch before the rain, sets the table before the feast. The preparation itself calls forth the supply. The one who prepares for plenty lives differently. He does not speak of smallness, he does not fear the future, he does not clutch at what little he has. He knows that divine supply is always more than enough, and he opens his hands to receive it. He arranges his home to welcome it. He expands his thinking to hold it, he makes ready in word and deed. His very readiness is a signal to the universe, and the universe answers with increase. Preparation is faith in action. Words of abundance must be matched by acts of abundance. To declare, "I am rich," while living in fear of spending is to speak with two tongues. But to declare, "I am rich," and then to act as one who trusts his riches, that is alignment. That is preparation for plenty. Every bill can be paid with the spirit of preparation, not fear. I pay this in faith that more is coming. Every act of generosity can be given as preparation. I circulate this in confidence that plenty will return. Every plan can be laid as preparation. I expand my affairs because I know are prospering. Each of these becomes a seed planted for plenty, and the harvest must appear. The poor man thinks he must wait to have before he prepares. He says, "When I have money, then I will act differently. Then I will plan for more, then I will expand." But the law says he must first act as if he has, and then he will have. Waiting to prepare is waiting for the harvest without planting seed. Faith prepares in advance. Faith lays the foundation before the building appears. Faith acts as though the plenty is already certain, because in truth it is. Supply exists in the invisible, waiting only for the vessel prepared to hold it. Consider the guest who expects a visitor. If he believes no one will come, he makes no preparation. The house remains unready, the door locked. But if he believes the guest is sure to arrive, He sets the table, he opens the door, he clears the room. And when the guest comes, he is welcomed. Supply is like the guest. If man does not prepare, it does not enter. But the moment he prepares, supply arrives to fill the space made ready. Preparation for plenty begins in thought. A man must enlarge his vision, break down the walls of small expectation, see himself living in abundance. He must picture success, he must imagine prosperity. He must dwell in the mental atmosphere of plenty. Then he must match that vision with words, words of increase, words of gratitude, words that affirm the arrival of abundance. And finally, he must match thought and word with action, steps that prove his faith, movements that open the door. Each level of preparation strengthens the call, and the call is always answered. Even the smallest acts prepare the way. Saving a place at the table, clearing a corner of the home, enlarging a business plan, paying a bill with joy, giving a gift in faith, all are acts of preparation. They may seem simple, but they are powerful signals to the law of supply. They say, I believe in plenty. I am ready to receive. I make room now. And what is made room for cannot fail to appear. To prepare for plenty is also to release what no longer serves. The man who hoards the old leaves no space for the new. Closets filled with worn garments, shelves stacked with unused goods, accounts bound to old debts, all these are signs of preparing for lack. But the one who clears away the unnecessary, who releases the old with joy, who lets go of yesterday's smallness, prepares for increase. He empties his vessel, and the law fills it anew. He proves by action that he expects more, and more must come. Preparation for plenty changes one's spirit. The fearful man moves through life braced for disappointment, preparing for failure, expecting loss. But the man of faith walks lightly, joyfully, with his eyes lifted and his hands open. He expects good news, he expects opportunities, he expects money, he expects success. His very expectation draws them. His preparation shapes his world. For life is a mirror, and it reflects what man is ready to receive. The secret is simple: man is always preparing, whether for plenty or for want. His words, his actions, his thoughts are continually setting the stage. If he fills the stage with props of poverty, poverty enters. If he fills the stage with props of abundance, abundance takes its place. He cannot avoid the harvest, he can only choose the seed. And the seed is his preparation.